Hey guys, Alex here. Today I have for you a Sun Ultra Enterprise 6000. Now these were released in the mid-90s by Sun Microsystems. This is pretty much the flagship model of this series of the Ultra Enterprise servers. There were the Ultra Enterprise, like the 6500, 4500, I call them the 500 series, which is just a little bit of a step up above this. But the 6000 was the top of the line of the original, 3000, 4000, 5000, and 6000 series of enterprise servers. There was also the Sun Enterprise 10,000, but that was a completely different machine. So let's go ahead, let's dive in and get a closer look at it. Okay, so you're now looking at the front panel of the machine. Normally there is a little decorative plate right about there, but this came to me with broken tabs. So I'm going to have to grab another one from our location. But that's not too big of a deal. Behind this panel, you have kind of the main control system, I guess is the best way to say it. Basically, there is a key-based, I call it an ignition system, even though it's not really, it allows you to turn the machine on, put it in standby, all those other various tasks. Keys would go in, and then you'd be able to turn the cylinder to lock it, or to turn it on, or turn it off, all that kind of stuff. But these keys, although they fit, and they actually are labeled Sun 6000 Enterprise, do not turn the cylinder. So either they are the wrong keys, or maybe the cylinder's jammed, or I'm not sure. So I'll have to figure that out. Either way, you also have a CD drive and a tape drive. My tape drive's got a little crack in the faceplate, so this is kind of loose. Maybe I'll grab another one. This is also just a normal CD drive. It is not a DVD drive. So you can only use, Solaris operating system disks that are on CDs, which I believe is pretty hard to find for the newer versions of Solaris 10. Solaris 11 is not supported on this. I don't know if it'll run or not. I actually kind of just got this machine about an hour ago. It's about 1 in the morning. So I'm kind of running on a lot of caffeine here. But either way, so yeah, if you're going to want to run a modern Solaris distribution on this, you're either going to have to put a DVD drive in it. I'm not sure if it needs a specialty one. I haven't gotten that far yet. But either way, you'll either need a DVD drive or a CD-based distribution of Solaris. Now, this whole front panel comes off. It's pretty easy. It's just kind of spring-loaded on there. One quick motion takes it off. And this is, again, the control panel, my broken tape drive. This, I'm not really sure what it is at the moment. It is some kind of disk-based storage. I've already had this open. As you can see, it's on rail, so it does slide out. And it takes SCSI disks. 5 1/4 inch SCSI disks. These are 9 gigabyte Seagate drives. These are absolutely huge. And they predate this machine, actually. While I'm sure they were still in use at the time, Sun had some StorEdge solutions, like the StorEdge D1000 or the A5000, which some were fiber channel and some were SCSI based, but either way, much more robust systems with 73 gigabyte disks, or we're talking about the mid-90s here. This is not old enough for these kind of disks. So my thought is that maybe whoever originally had this machine, maybe they had like an older Sun server that was running, an older version of Solaris to do something, and they just migrated all the disks over. There are more of these. There are 3 more trays of these 5 1/4 inch disks in this server cabinet, and which makes it very heavy. What's interesting about these, though, is this is the front cover. Let me grab this. This front cover has a Sun logo on it. But this part number is non-referenceable. I cannot find anything on it. What I can find, though, and I'll show you this in a little bit, on the side of this box is the logo, if I can find it. It must be on the other side. It's a different company's logo. A company called Zytec, out of Minneapolis. Minneapolis, yes? Yes, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm not really sure what they do. I'll have to do some research on them. Obviously, they made some kind of storage solution that used SCSI disks. It looks like you have some kind of disk or SCSI channel selectors or something like that. Not too familiar with it, so I'll have to do a little bit of research on it. But it's cool nonetheless. If I actually do use this machine, I will probably get rid of this and the other 3 at the bottom and switch over to like a storage A5000 or A5200, just so I can, use modern disks with more than what would appear to be about 30 gigs of space. Seems like a little bit of a waste to me, but maybe they had some kind of specialty purpose that I'm unaware of. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch scenes here, and we're going to take a look at the bottom of the chassis. Okay, so this is the core of the Enterprise 6000 itself. Now, this is directly below the storage system, which is up here that I just showed you. There's also, like I said, more storage systems down here below. Essentially, you have a multitude of boards. These are all CPU boards on this side. And these are all power supplies. One power supply supplies the power for 2 boards. There's also a set of power supplies on the other side. I believe these are redundant. I believe you can lose one, and the one on the other side powers on these 2 boards as well as the 2 boards on the other side. There's on the rear end of the server, there's another power supply directly behind this one. And there's like a center plane board in between these, because there's a whole other set of boards on the other side, and they all plug into the center plane. Either way, so these boards are basically in a lock type of fashion. Basically, a Phillips head lock is here and here. You just stick a screwdriver, turn it to unlock, and the board can be removed. Let me find the one. A lot of these are locked at the moment. This one is the unlocked one, I believe. If I can get in here. Locked. No, this is the unlocked one. So, by pulling these out, you can essentially slide the whole board out. You're going to put those back in. And the whole board comes out one piece. Now each board has 2 processors and a multitude of RAM slots. I was fortunate enough to get this machine decked out with all 400 megahertz processors. So all of these boards are maxed out. I believe they're also maxed out on memory as well, which it's either 2 gigabytes or 4 gigabytes per board. I'm not sure on that, but whichever it is, it has the maximum amount of memory that can be put into it. So I'm going to go set this off to the side. Okay, so like I said, you have the power supplies on this side. I've actually removed the power supplies from the rear. I'll show you the rear in just a second. Let me grab a power supply. So the power supplies kind of look something like this. Notice I have 2 fans on one side, a bunch of power supply components. The same 2 Phillips head locks and the connectors on the back. Hot swappable, just slide in and out, nice and easy. This machine was made with redundancy in mind, and I'm not sure how many boards you can have fail simultaneously, but essentially what will happen, as far as, as long as my reading is correct, I haven't actually been able to power this on and test it. But you can have, any power supply fail. You can have a board fail, and all the contents of its memory on this board will just be dynamically transferred to all the other boards, and this board will be shut down. And you just come in here, you tell the system controller that you're going to take the board out. You take the board out, slide in a new one, or slide in a repaired board after you've repaired it. It'll detect it. You tell the system controller to bring it back up, and it brings it back up, and it begins magically working again. The operating system does not care. It just continues to run with or without the board. Same goes for power supplies, although I believe they're redundant. You don't actually lose any boards if a power supply goes down. I'll show you the other side, like I said, just in a minute. Here's some basic connectors up here. I know there is a control board. I'm not sure if this is the exact control board or if this is just the interface portion of it. As you see, you just have some cables that route back. They route back up where I was showing you earlier where the key system is, which I believe is this cable right here. Looks like you've got the tape drive and CD drive cables, which I believe are both SCSI. They connect right here. Some of these probably also go, this one here I believe, it's kind of got a DC power mark on it, so I believe this one probably goes to the huge array of fans in the back, and then this looks like SCSI. So yes, now let's move on below to the additional storage units. Okay, so these are the 3 additional storage units I was telling you about. They're exactly identical to the top one, like I showed you at first, filled with a bunch of 5 1/4 inch drives with about 9 gigs of space per drive. I think each one holds 6 drives. So not a whole lot of space at all. There's 3 of them down there. These are all made by Zytec, but they do have some part numbers on them, which doesn't make sense. Oh, I don't know if I showed you this, but this is a door. Anyways, these are kind of interesting. They have some kind of selector switch on them. I think I brought that up earlier, but either way, I'm not sure what they do. It looks like you can change some kind of channel. Either way, when you're pulling things like these out, these are very heavy. They have a power supply in them, they have fans, they have 6 5¼ drives. These have a lot of weight. If you were to pull all 3 of these out, you would easily load the front end of the server enough to, you know, make it topple forward and crush you. It weighs 1,000 pounds. You would not want this to fall on you. So, Sun thought ahead, and they made this little nice contraption. And this is a balancer. Essentially, it is a stabilizer that allows you to pull all of these out without the server toppling forward. There's also some safety feet at the bottom. You know, this whole thing's on caster wheels, but there are some feet at the bottom which you can unscrew, and they will, you know, dig into the floor in that case, which is a nice touch. I'm sure Sun's not the only one who does this, but hey, you know, at least they thought about it. So I'm going to turn this machine around. I'm going to put this back in real quick. Now, I am here by myself. It's about 1 in the morning. I think I already said that, but either way. I can move this machine by myself. It is certainly not easy though. It is very heavy. It is hard to get moving. It's like one of those things, once you get moving, it's not too bad, but initially getting it rolling is difficult. It weighs, I believe this one totaled in at like 1,060 pounds, which is on the heavier side for this server. I believe a lot of that is attributed to all the 5¼ drives in these massive storage bays. I think these things are supposed to be around 800 pounds normally. But either way, that's still a lot of weight. It was a complete pain in the ass just to get here. So if you can, have a second person to help you move it around. I don't have that luxury at the moment. So I'm going to go turn this thing around, and we're going to take a look at the back side of this machine. Okay, so here's the back side of the kind of main computing unit in the Enterprise 6000. The same form factor as the front. You have, you know, obviously your 8 main boards, your 4 power supplies. I'm not sure if I already showed you these or not, but you know, power supply comes out very easily, 2 fans. Supplies power to 2 boards. They are hot swappable. As far as the boards here, you're going to see a little bit of difference. Up top here, this is a power supply also. This power supply supplies power to the main system controller, which I believe is kind of a cooperative effort between a couple of boards. But essentially, the interface for the main system controller is right here. It's a little bit of a smaller board. Different power cable. Essentially, you've got a bunch of serial connections, mouse, keyboard. Very simple board. It's more or less just a interface for the main system controller. I don't think it's the system controller itself, although it could be. I would be willing to bet that the system controller is probably either on the front side where all those 3 cables plugged in, or part of the center plane itself. Put all this stuff back in. These boards down here are all I/O boards. These will allow you to put in, you know, these proprietary Sun cards. Essentially, you know, as you can see, there are tons of SCSI cards in this machine right now. And I'm attributing that to all these SCSI drives at the top and the bottom that I showed you earlier. I'll show you one of these. I believe this one's unlocked. Yes. A little bit of tight fit. Don't want to hit that edge. There we go. I lost the plate. Okay, so as you can see, you have just some proprietary card. Looks like a bunch of SCSI cards right up front there. They also had the ability to put some fiber channel cards in here, which is if you had like a Sun StorEdge A5000, which would be very useful. You know, I actually have some fiber channel ones. Let me slide this back in. It's a little bit of a trick to get these in here. You do have to line them up with the rails, or else they'll just slide above the other boards, which makes it a little bit of a pain in the ass. I did lose this, but it's like some kind of sun. Do not flatten. Yeah, well, let's figure out where that went to. You gotta be a little careful plugging these back in. They don't always like to go easy. And you can force and break them. This is another I/O board down here. This one's got fiber channel cards, which I'm not sure why they did, considering it had 2 slots for fiber channel already that you could put little micro cards in. But, you know, it's the same thing. It is an I/O slot. In these I/O slots, you can also place graphics cards. There is one right here. It's got the standard Sun connector. I'm not sure which one that is. I haven't gotten into it yet, but I believe the best one you can put is called like a Creator 3D. Yeah, it would be interesting to put one of those in here, hook up a monitor, and run Quake 3 for Spark, just to see how many frames per second it could pull off. Complete overkill, but you know, it'd just be kind of fun. Down at the bottom, this is the only blank in the system. This is just a blank tray. You pull it out and it's just a piece of metal. So yes, that's just about it. I don't think I went over this. This is the AC power sequencer. Essentially, it on boot up, it will say, okay, turn this power supply on, that power supply, this one, that one. It kind of just controls the overall startup so that you're you don't blow a fuse as soon as you power the system on. Okay, so let's take a look at one of the back side of the storage systems. Okay, so this is the back side of the storage blocks that I was showing you earlier, or the storage arrays, probably a more appropriate term. Bunch of SCSI connectors. They take 6 drives, but there's only 4 connectors, so that's a little interesting. So obviously it does something. I'm not sure what it does yet. I'll have to figure that out. 200 to 240 volt input on all this. This whole system runs on roughly 240 AC, which is high. It's expected with something this large, but it is what it is. Really kind of boring here. You just got SCSI connectors, power, and it looks exactly the same as the rest. So regardless, let's go ahead and look at there's a power input over here. We can look at the fans as well. We're over there. Okay, so this is the main power input. Now, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's been slightly bashed in. What I'm assuming happened was basically, it's got a 240 volt connector right here. Just your standard 240 volt. I'm not sure if this is a NEMA plug. I'll have to figure that out. Maybe swap it over if it's not standard. But basically, you could pull the cover off. This is the Sun connector that would come in. And this slides and locks. And then plug the other side into a 240 outlet, and the whole system is magically running. Now, what I'm assuming happened was this sticks out a considerable amount when pushed in. I'm going to assume that either in storage or being moved from warehouse to warehouse, this was pushed up against a wall, and it pushed all of this in. It's, I would say, down here towards the bottom, up top, not bent in at all. Down here, it is bent in, not the actual framing of the server, but well, maybe a little bit. But it's the relatively thin metal portions. It looks like you could unscrew it here and kind of warp it back into shape. So I'm going to take all this apart, make sure it's still functional. If it is still functional, maybe try to bend some of the external casing back. It's not bent in a whole lot. I would say maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. But regardless, I don't want to plug it in and blow it up right off the bowl. So either way, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Okay, so right behind this grate here is the big, gigantic fan array. Now, I'm not going to take this grate off and show all this because, to be honest, it looks like a complete and total bitch to get all these screws out, and I'd rather not mess with it right now. As long, maybe I'll mess with it if a fan is bad. But essentially, you can see the 240 lines coming into power the fan base. Looks like there's one here and one down there. Or maybe that's a serial connection of some kind of control connection. Can't really make that out right now, but either way, there's a big wall of fans essentially. I'm sure these are very, very loud. Sun likes to make very loud fans. Well, they don't make the fans, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's pretty much a general overview of all the pieces in this Sun Enterprise 6000. As far as where I'm going to go from here, I'm probably going to end up taking the whole thing apart and kind of just checking all the parts, make sure everything's functional. There's some corrosion down here on the bottom of the rack that I like to clean up, and I like to make sure it's not spread to any of the other parts. The AC inlet that I pointed out earlier was a little bit bent in. I'd like to either replace or fix, and just kind of make sure everything in here, is within spec. I'd like to test all these storage arrays and make sure they at least operate, but I probably won't use them in this machine. Like I said, these hard drives in these arrays are going to predate this machine, by quite a bit actually. What I'll probably end up doing is getting like a Sun StorEdge A5000 or A5200 and link everything in via fiber channel in a single storage array with a lot more space and a lot more speed. I really don't need all these SCSI cards, so I'll probably take all these I/O cards out but one. Put in that Creator 3D graphics card I talked about earlier. Put in some, networking ports, and probably just run it as a server, and maybe run some Quake on it just to do it, just to see what kind of FPS I can get out of it, which is kind of fun. I'd like to get some more CPU boards to replace these I/O boards. Like I said earlier, it already has 400 megahertz with maxed out memory on all the existing CPU boards, so I just have to get like 6 more. So that's not too big of a deal considering these same CPU boards were used in, the Sun Enterprise 3000, 4000, and 5000, which are a little bit easier to find than this giant Goliath of a server. Maybe I'll run into some mail server or web server or voice over IP, or hell, maybe even all of those things. I don't think it's necessarily practical. It probably uses more power to do all of that on something this old than just getting some newer stuff, but it's more of just a fun entertainment piece than anything. So I'm going to clean this up, take it apart, get a StorEdge, whatever, a 5000 or 5200, and try to spice things up a little bit and get it all powered on and running. That's probably going to take me a little bit of time to source all the parts, so it's probably going to be a while before part 2. But anything interesting I come across throughout then, I'll make sure to throw into the next video. So stay tuned, and as usual, subscribe if you like all of this crazy technology stuff that I like to put in this channel. You guys have a good one. All right.